now, so it should be started. I'm going to give a brief overview of MCLA-IAH. So the Institute for the Arts and Humanities is a grant-funded initiative supported by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, which works to strategically promote equity-centered change on campus and the community by expanding access to area arts and humanities resources, catalyzing opportunities for interdisciplinary engagements, and advancing experiential teaching and learning practices in higher education. And I would like to introduce our panelists for coming and helping and presenting today. So thank you guys so much. Antonello has nearly 20 years of fundraising and sales experience. Prior to joining Williamstown Theater Festival, he was the director of development at Second Stage Theater, where he oversaw the capital and endowment campaign to renovate the historic Hayes Theater on Broadway. A native of Chicago, he started his professional career at the Illinois Shakespeare Festival while attending Illinois State University in the cornfields of Central Illinois. Upon graduating summa cum laude, he moved to New York City to work for Manhattan Theater Club. 6.5 years and 4 fundraising positions later, most recently as director of special events, he then moved to sunny San Diego to lead the individual giving efforts of La Jolla Playhouse. Antonello moved to bucolic Williamstown in 2017 and welcomed the opportunity to be reunited with Mandy Greenfield and her incomparable vision for new works and new play development. He is the immediate past president of the Williamstown Chamber of Commerce and continues to serve on its board as the chair of the marketing committee. And he has also served on the executive committee for the Williamstown Cultural District, on the steering committee for Art Country, and on One Berkshire's Creative Cluster Leadership Committee. Wow, that's a lot of words, and you've been a lot of places that I didn't know about, Antonello. So thank you, Antonello, for being here. Next, we have Laura Savia. Laura Savia is the Associate Artistic Director of the Tony Award-winning Williamstown Theater Festival, where she is in her 10th season. Directing credits include the world premieres of Shakina Nafak's Chonburi International Hotel and Butterfly Club on Williamstown's Audible season, James Anthony Tyler's Artney Jackson at Williamstown, Lucy Thurber's Once Upon a Time in the Berkshires and Orpheus in the Berkshires at Williamstown, Lucy Thurber's Unstuck, and Bare Knuckle, as well as Ryan Haddad's Hi, Are You Single? Her production of Jonathan Caron's The Recommendation of IAMA won 2 Ovation Awards, including Best Production. Other directing credits include James Lassine's The Absolute Brightness of Leonardo Pelkey, Adam Rapp's Red Light Winter, and Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale featuring Hoon Lee. She has directed short plays by Rob Askins and Hallie Pfeiffer for Naked Angels, and living newspaper plays by Sarah Burgess and Dawn Nguyen. She has developed work with Roundabout Theater Company, New York Theater Workshop, Atlantic Theater Company, Second Stage, Labyrinth Theater Company, Ars Nova, Playwrights Realm, Primary Stages, Rattlestick, and Ma-Yi Theater Company. Assistant directing includes Broadway's The Merchant of Venice, starring Al Pacino. Laura spent 5 seasons on the artistic staff at Atlantic Theater Company, and she is alum of the Drama League Directors Project and Northwestern University. So thank you, Laura, for being here. I'll toss it over to you guys to kind of get started however you'd like. Yeah.
Thanks, Declan, for the great introduction. Like
for reciting our biographies.
Seeing your life flash before your eyes. And I would just encourage everybody who wants to or is willing to please turn on your camera. Antonello and I are people. So we would love to see your faces. We'd love to get a sense of you. Maybe we can, network a little bit. So if at any point you are willing to turn on your camera, even if you need to turn it back off later, I would encourage you to do so. We can kind of pretend we're all together in a room. So yes, Antonello and I are coming to you from our positions at Williamstown Theater Festival. And I thought we should just start by saying, what is Williamstown Theater Festival? And first of all, even before that, I just want to really thank Erica and Declan for welcoming, and everybody at MCLA and the Institute for welcoming us and for putting this event together. I think this is such a cool event. I'm a huge fan of MCLA. I have many friends who are alums of MCLA. I've spent time on your campus. I'm a big fan of Disfunct Crew. I am like all about it. And I've been wanting to do an event like this where we could come a little closer to each other, our two organizations, for many years, actually. So this event tonight is kind of a dream come true, and I hope it'll be the first of many. And I hope that we won't be strangers by the end of this, and that If you want to stay in touch with Williamstown Theater Festival, you will, be able to do that. So what is Williamstown Theater Festival? Some of you may know, some of you may not. It is a theater company that has been in operation for 67 years, right down the road in Williamstown, Massachusetts. We produce a year's worth of theater every summer in 10 weeks. So we are really a summer stock model, but we have, I think, evolved over recent decades to be very, very plugged in as well to the New York theater scene, because we transfer a lot of shows that we produce to Broadway and off-Broadway and to other regional theaters. We're kind of known for, I suppose, big glitzy Broadway caliber productions, and a lot of times celebrities come through and do our plays, and that's great. That can be great. But what I love about the festival, and what I don't think enough people know, is we actually run a robust training program for everything from internships to fellowships to entry-level paid positions. We typically have 400 people working at the festival in the summer. Most of them are not celebrities. Most of them are like you and me. And so I encourage you to check out everything we have on offer. I'm going to actually put a link in the chat. If you're interested in seasonal positions, this assumes we're going to be able to do a season this summer. We're very hopeful that it is still an if. But all of our internships, fellowships, training opportunities, and paid seasonal work opportunities are at that link. Another thing people don't often know about Williamstown Theater Festival is that we operate a year-round community engagement initiative called Community Works, and that's been in existence for the past 5 years and change. And Community Works has 12 partner organizations all throughout Western Mass and operates out of the belief that theater belongs to everyone. So what we do is with our 12 partner organizations, and those range from Soldier On to Berkshire County ARC to Berkshire Community College to Williamstown Youth Center, we do workshops year round, not just in the summer. Playwriting workshops, acting workshops, comedy, movement, any or all of the above. And then in the summertime, we typically put on a play that features a cast of 100 people that is written, inspired by stories we've heard in Western Mass, featuring a cast of 100 community members from Western Mass. And really, it's a celebration of life in Western Mass. So I don't know if we'll be able to pull that off this summer, given COVID, but the Community Works workshops are happening year round. So I always like to talk about the training program and Community Works, because there's a lot more to the festival than just like Bradley Cooper came here once. So that's my WTF in a nutshell. Antonella, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to reiterate the caveat, we are very, 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 very hopeful that we will be able to return to something like live theater this summer. More than likely, it's not going to look like anything we've ever done before, or maybe anything that we'll ever do again. But we are lock in step with Williams College, as well as the local government here in Williamstown and Actors Equity, to make sure that anything that we want to do is going to be safe, not just for our artists and our company members, but also for our audiences. And we're also working very closely with all the other theaters in Berkshire County and the major museums to make sure that we're really thinking about who's coming here this summer to visit, and how we can make sure that they're safe and they're keeping our artists and company members safe as well. So fingers crossed, we hope to announce something in the coming weeks. We are, just so everybody knows, Laura put the link there for the jobs. We've kind of put a pause on the hiring process, the actual interviewing process, just for a couple of weeks. So if you don't hear from us right away, it's okay. That doesn't mean we're not interested. It just means we want to be able to know what we're kind of doing before we actually offer any sort of interviews and contracts, anything of that sort. So on that note, I guess we'll talk about what each of our departments do and how we are hiring managers within those. So as Declan mentioned, I'm the Director of Audience Engagement. So essentially anything that touches the audience or deals with the audience falls under my purview. So that's anything from box office to front of house, concessions, the gift shop. I also sell program ads for our program books. That all falls under me. And I typically hire a staff of anywhere between 12 and 13 people. This summer, we still don't know, but unlike other departments, may need to downsize for the summer based on whatever projects we will do. I will probably still be hiring around the same amount of people as usual, just because there's so many different COVID-19 protocols in place, and we need help to make sure, again, that everybody is safe. And things that I typically look for in candidates are people that like to just talk. If you're interested in theater and know how to talk about theater, great. Do you have to have worked in a box office before? No. If you have any sort of other customer service experience, that's great. So if you work in a restaurant or a store, if you tutor kids, really anything where you've interacted with people, that is a plus for me, because you then know how to deal with the general public, which for the most part are lovely, lovely, lovely people. But you also just have to know, and one thing that you learn working at the festival is how to deal with maybe sometimes prickly situations and how to get out of those as quickly as possible. What else do I do, Laura? Anything else that I've missed?
You're the beating heart of Williamstown Theater Festival, but
yeah, so thank you. I think we mentioned this, there's only 12 of us year round, and we're split between New York City and Williamstown. So there are 2.5 of us here in the Williamstown office, and I say half because we have one person that only works 20 hours a week. She splits her time between the theater festival and Williams College, which was a real coup for us to have and to build on that relationship with the college as well. And yeah, we kind of hold the fort here. And as Declan mentioned, I'm very, very involved in the Williamstown of it all, in local government, as well as the chamber member community. It was really important for the theater festival to have someone in this role involved in that way, because the majority of the staff is in New York City, and they oftentimes only come up in the summertime, but then we have people like Laura and some others that come up throughout the year because they're holding workshops on that. So we wanted to make sure that we maintained a Williamstown presence, since most of the work that we do is here in Williamstown. Laura, what do you do?
Great. And it looks like, is there one more person we need to admit into the room? Oh, yeah. Erica's on it.
She's just having trouble joining, but I'm on it.
Great. And if you're just joining us, if you've just joined us, please feel free to turn on your camera. We would love to make some new friends tonight, see your faces. You're welcome to turn on your camera and turn it off later when you need to, or vice versa. Yes, my role at Williamstown Theater Festival, and this is all just to give you a little context before we dive into the meat of tonight's work, which is really about approach for resume, and how to be a competitive candidate. I'm the Associate Artistic Director at the festival. I'm in my 5th year or 6th year, depending on how you count, of being in this seat. And before being in this seat, I ran our training programs for 4 years. So and before that, a long time ago, I interned at the festival. So I'm in my 10th or 11th year with the festival. What I do, I oversee and coordinate everything having to do with casting. At the moment, I also oversee everything having to do with education. So our training programs, our early career BIPOC theater makers program. Hopefully, if we're able to have non-equity actors in our season, I'll be coordinating those auditions and that recruitment. So anything touching training or casting. And then I work closely with our artistic director on pretty much all artistic matters, although she is the definitive, deciding vote on everything. I try to support her in choosing a season, making sure we're up to speed on who the hot new playwrights are that we should be reading. Anything having to do with our commissioning program, where we commission writers to write plays, supporting directors, and to some degree designers in their processes, although other colleagues of mine work much more closely with designers. But that's kind of an overview of my role. Oh, and I also oversee the Community Works program. So I tend to hire a handful of people each summer, working on literary, working on community works, and working in the professional training department. So that's kind of where my head is right now as we think about recruiting for the season. And what I look for is people who get stuff done. I really look for follow through. I look for, am I confident that if you have a task or a project that you're managing, you will drive it to completion? Are you detail oriented? Are you a self-starter? Are you able to get shiz done? That goes across all departments. A passion for storytelling and community is definitely important as well. But I find that actually most candidates have that. The deciding factor is, can I really trust that this person is going to get us across the finish line on any given project? And then we wanted to find out who you are so that we can tailor the next sort of 45 minutes to y'all. So could you just use does everybody have access to chat in this room? It's not like a Q&A thing, right?
No, everyone should have access to the chat.
Everyone can chat. So can everybody just please chat like your name, your pronouns if you would like to, and like what field or fields you're interested in. And Antonella and I can just put our eyes on it and be like, oh wow, there's a lot of actors in this room, or there's a lot of, producers in this room. Just a little straw poll in the chat. And if you're interested in something outside of theater, that's fine too.
Yeah, there's always this misnomer that you have to, particularly among college students, that you have to have studied theater to get a job in the theater. That is so not true, not true at all. And we've been working really hard, at least in Williams College, to get that point across, that if you study economy, we have a business office, that you might have a role there. If you enjoy writing, if you're a creative writer, you can work in the fundraising office and help with like grant writing. It's no one wants to be pigeonholed. I don't think they never liked it, but especially nowadays, like that the thing that you study is the thing that you must do. That's just not true. That's just not true.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And what I always say is college is this time to try different things. If you are studying something outside of theater, why not work for a summer theater company and see if you like it? You'll know. You will know after a summer. You'll know after a summer at the theater festival, because it is pretty amazing how much we accomplish in such a short period amount of time. What most theaters do in a year, we do, as Laura mentioned, in 8 to 10 weeks. Declan knows full well. And it's at the end of the summer, every summer, we are exhausted, but also just awe-inspired by what the heck we were able to accomplish. So yeah. All right, so lots of arts management, community engagement folks, creative writing, directing, choreography. Yes. Yes. Okay.
This is a great mix.
I love it.
Electrics and lighting. Love that, Lydia. Graphic design. Beautiful. Great.
Acting.
Great. This is such a good group. Great. And please use the chat liberally. As Declan said, there's time at the end for questions, but you can also just pepper us with questions or be like, hey, could you drill down on that? Like, we are here for you. So let's dive in. The theme Antonello and I hope to hammer home tonight is your resume tells a story. It is as simple as that and endlessly difficult. Your resume tells a story, an actual narrative. And I really mean that. And I've seen it come true both as a hiring manager and also as an applicant myself. Your resume tells a story whether you're thinking about what the story is or not, just like your Facebook page tells a story whether you're thinking about that or not when you post certain pictures. We, the hiring managers, are going to connect dots however we can to infer what that story is. So hopefully tonight we can talk you through how to be in charge of those dots and make sure that they are telling the story you want them to tell.
And why that's so important, sorry, just to jump in, is that oftentimes hiring managers are looking at hundreds of applications, both resumes and cover letters. So you want to find a way to stand out. And that doesn't mean, create all these amazing graphics to put on your resume necessarily, but just who are you, right? How do you set yourself apart from the other 99 people we may be also looking at in one afternoon?
Absolutely. So let's start breaking this down. We're going to first go over some kind of tenets of how to tell the story through your resume. I'll just talk them at you. And then we're going to spend a lot of time actually looking at resumes and explaining what we mean using examples from our own resumes we've pulled from colleagues. And also, I think toward the end, Declan's going to like pop up some resumes from the MCLA community, and Antonello and I will kind of respond in the moment. So your resume tells a story. First thought I want to share with you is, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, you are welcome to re-edit your resume every time you send it out. You can tailor it to each job or each position or each internship you're applying for, and you probably should, right? You can do research to understand what is the hiring manager looking for? What do they say they're looking for in the job posting? What market are they in? What geographic area are they in? Who have they worked with that they might have heard of one of your professors, or they might care about a specific class you took, or they might care about a specific project you worked on. There's nothing shady about rejiggering your resume for your intended audience. I know every time I submit a resume anywhere, I pull stuff back onto it. I lob other stuff off. If I'm submitting a resume to be considered to direct a Shakespeare play, I have to do quite an overhaul on my resume. As you'll see, it's mostly new plays. I kicked the Shakespeare off a while ago, so I got to drag that back up to the top if I'm applying to like Oregon Shakespeare Festival to direct something. Not that I would, because I have an exclusive contract with Williamstown right now. But there's no crime in knowing your audience. In fact, you'll do well to know your audience. So we'll take a look at that, what that looks like in certain resume examples in a minute. The next thought is break your resume into sections with headers that tell a narrative of who you are and what you're after. So Antonello, maybe you can talk about when you have 100 resumes to go through, like what do you actually, how many minutes are you spending with each resume? What are your eyeballs actually landing on?
That's right.
Why is this header point important?
Yes. So I one of the reasons why I wanted to do this seminar with Laura is that I love like teaching others about resumes and cover letter writing, which we will get to, because that is also a very important part of telling the story and a part that you want to look different than the resume as well. I do look at everything. I read every piece of paper in the application very thoroughly, but I can't say that is true of every hiring manager everywhere in the United States. And nowadays, especially like bigger corporations, there are computer programs and programming that actually run through resumes to pick out keywords. And what I say by keywords is take a look at what the job description asks for and don't be afraid to use those words. You don't have to necessarily use them word for word, but find either a different way of saying it or just use what they said, but incorporate it into what it meant for you in that specific job, right? So if it calls for 3 years of box office experience or sales experience, then if you've never worked in the box office, it's okay. Start your resume off with all of any jobs that you may have had in the customer service industry. That can be a restaurant, that could be retail. That does, just because you don't have the theater experience, again, going back to something I said earlier, doesn't rule you out. Because what I'm looking for is people that know how to deal with the public. So you should list the jobs that are most relevant to the position as your work experience or relevant experience. And then if you have other work experience, create a second header that's like all the other jobs that you may have had. But start with your work experience. Then let me know what your education, right? If you're still in school, no problem. Just say you're pursuing X degree from Y college, anticipated graduation on Z date. What I don't think you need to do is put your GPA. GPAs are very important to us in the moment in college because we want to get as strong a GPA as possible, right? But in the like real working world, that doesn't tell me anything, right? Someone could have a 4.0 GPA and be the rudest people that I would never hire in a customer service job. So take it out. Leave no room for any interpretation of what a 3.5 is versus a 3.2. It doesn't matter. You know what does matter? Were you on the dean's list? Let us know that. Did you get any sort of scholarship? Let us know that. Any other committees that you may be involved in college, list those out, because we will interpret what that translates to in terms of relevant experience. And then also have a section for skills, for a skill set. What databases are you proficient at? And when I say proficient, I don't mean that you are going to build this amazing database in Excel that can do all these fancy things. That's not necessary, but do you know what Excel is? Do you know what the Microsoft Office suite is? Do you have experience in it? Are there sales platforms either that you've used at your retail job or at your restaurant or at a former box office? Let me know that. So that will tell me, okay, this person has database experience. They understand the concept of the data that you put in is the data that you put out. So are they going to be detail oriented in that way? Sometimes jobs in the theater request if you have a driver's license. Let us know. It's something that we don't think about because it's like, yeah, most people drive, but that's not true, right? In New York City, probably a lot of people don't drive. But if you do have a valid driver's license, let us know. Do you speak other languages? Do you have ASL experience? Let us know everything possible, and don't also be afraid to like personalize this. Oftentimes I will see fun things like whistling, singing. That just tells me a little bit more about you, that it's not just someone that is like, go to the job. Like that there's a personality there, right? We're in the theater. We want people to have personalities. We want people to be able to showcase who they are in their work. And it doesn't just mean being able to do X, Y, and Z. So have some fun with it.
Which is a perfect segue into another point I want to make, which is personality is great as long as your presentation is still professional, right? You want to strike that nice balance between personality and professionalism. So I remember a couple of years, a bunch of us received applications from the same candidate who like had graphics designed their resume with like 5 different colors, and there was like confetti in the envelope. So when you open the envelope, you would have like confetti fall on your lap, and then you'd open up this colorful thing. And it was too much. It was too much. It was just extra. It was like, okay, why? And you couldn't quite take the person seriously. And to boot, and this is the real problem, there wasn't a lot of substance on the resume.
Right.
So you don't want to be all style and no substance. You really want to be substance forward. By substance, I don't mean your resume needs to be 5 pages long. In fact, please don't make it 5 pages long. You know, someone coming right out of undergrad, 1 page should be plenty. 2 pages is a good maximum for all of us, unless you're being asked for, like, you know, Antonella was reminding me earlier that, you know, people who are asked to interview for academic positions might have to submit like a 5 or 6 page CV. But in our line of work, please keep it under 2 pages, and no confetti. I think that don't be afraid to keep it kind of simple, classy, clean lines, professional. On the other hand, especially if you're an artist, if you're a designer, certainly if you're a graphic designer, if you're an actor, if you're a director, you got to think about what font you want to choose. You got to think about the layout, because you can tell a lot about a person's aesthetic by how they put a document together. And that translates to, you know, how they run a rehearsal room or a design process. So we'll look at that with some examples. Antonella, you want to talk a little bit about cover letters before we look at
Yes.
examples of
And
resume?
just to go one more point, and I just want to reiterate what Laura said about, don't be afraid of a light resume. Meaning, if you don't have a lot of experience, it's okay. It's okay. We don't expect someone in college to have worked 100 different jobs or even 5 different jobs. But the jobs that you have had, right? Spell it out. let us know what you did. Are there accomplishments that you achieved in the role? Let us know that. Don't just say, help sell tickets to a performance. Better yet, I sold, helped to sell tickets at a performance and exceeded the goal by X%. That tells me, oh, okay, so they can do it, but they're also a go-getter. They also can achieve goals. They can also exceed goals. And that makes you even more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like attractive, for lack of a better word, because it tells me, okay, this is a go-getter. This is definitely someone I want to interview, as opposed to someone that says perhaps, oh, was a host at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
If I've never been to that restaurant, was it a high skill restaurant? Was it, just give me information. Tell me about the clientele that goes to that restaurant. What was your specific duties? Were you just checking people in? Did they take reservations? Maybe they didn't take reservations and you were constantly dealing with a group of people waiting to get in. Because I know that means those people were probably antsy and you had to deal with some prickly people. That's an asset to me, right? Because I know that theater patrons can be prickly. So if you have that experience at a restaurant, it might translate to the theater world as well. Cover letters. I love, and I have issues with things like Indeed, which just do like the resume. The cover letter to me is somewhat even more important than the resume, because in the resume, I kind of know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me the things that I've asked for in the job description, right? But the cover letter will really reveal your personality. And you do not need to regurgitate what was on your resume. I have your resume. I know what you did. Who are you? Who's the person behind this letter, right? So in the opening paragraph, tell me, where did you hear about that job? A lot of times, theater companies, any company, will be posting in a lot of different places, but we don't know where the most effective place is. Mm-hmm. So if you tell us, oh, I read about this at playbill.com, great. We know this is a place that we should post in the future. Double check, triple check, quadruple check that you send the correct cover letter and resume to the theater that you're applying to, oftentimes, because you might be sending multiple applications out. People forget to update the name of the theater and the name of the role that they're applying to, because the rest of the cover letter is the same. So I can't stress this enough. Double, triple, quadruple check, because if it's wrong, that's like for me, that's an automatic, they didn't think, this is not a detail-oriented person, because they're applying to a different theater company than the one that I'm actually representing. In the next paragraph, tell me a little bit about your experience without, again, regurgitating every single job you've had or every specific detail. Let me know about your personality. One interview question that I ask every candidate are, what are the 3 words that best describe you? Maybe find a way to put that into the cover letter and explain why those words define you. Give me examples of when that word really epitomized who you are. And then in the last paragraph, tell me why you're interested in this specific role and this company. It doesn't have to be completely elaborate, because we'll get into that during the interview process, but I want to know that you've done your research, right? For me, new play development is what makes me tick in the theater world. So I typically apply to theater companies that have a new play development focus. And I make sure to put that into my cover letter so they know that I know that's what their focus is. I'll leave it there until we do the demonstration or our example.
Beautiful. Okay. So I agree with and endorse every single thing Antonello said. And I'm just going to screen share
Any questions at this point? Just because it's a lot of information we threw, just in case. Any clarification? Awesome. Okay.
All right. So let me screen share this, which is mine. and just using it as an example to hammer home some of these things we've been talking about. Okay, you guys, you all can see that, yeah? So we're not going to, page 1 is my admin resume. I want to focus on this as an example of an artistic, of a directing resume, but here you see I have my name at the top, my contact info. Never give your home address. You don't want stalkers. Just an email, a phone number, and a website if you have one, or a LinkedIn page if you have one. But anyway, we're focusing here on the directing portion of the resume. Antonello is going to share his, which is more of an admin resume. So this resume, this page 2, my directing resume, it looks similar to how a lighting designer's resume would look, an actor's resume would look, a director's resume would look. It's pretty simple. There's usually 3 or 4 columns. The column on the left for a director is the name of the play or musical that you directed or assistant directed. The playwright comes next, usually in the second column. And then the third column is the theater or the venue where it was produced. Pretty straightforward. I also include the year in the far left-hand column. There's no hard and fast rule about including years, but I personally find it helpful to see that someone has progressed and has been consistently doing things, year in and year out. But that's kind of a personal choice. So here's what I wanted to point out. Remember I said the theme is your resume tells a story. So I am going for, with this story of my resume, I would hope that someone would look at my resume and say, she directs new plays. And the way I hope I've laid that out is by including the vast majority of playwrights I've mentioned are living playwrights. I've got one dead guy there, William Shakespeare, another dead guy, Tennessee Williams. But everybody else is alive and well, as far as I know. And so for someone anybody in the industry is going to be able to glance at my resume and be like, oh, she's a new play director. To further hammer that home, it's no accident I put right up here. Can you see my cursor? Yeah, denotes world premiere. And I wanted to make sure that where there's a lot of negative space, a lot of white space, that's where the eyeball is drawn to. So if I put world premiere right at the top of my resume, there's a decent chance people are going to clock that. And then maybe they'll notice that I've asterisked a bunch of plays, maybe they won't, but I embedded the word, I sort of incepted the word world premiere into their brain. So that's what I mean when I say your resume tells a story. I could have cobbled something together that made me look like she directs Shakespeare and musicals. Like I have enough of those credits. I could have like carved some of the Lucy Thurber plays out and put the Shakespeare and the musicals together, but I am trying to get hired mostly to do new plays, and that's why I've stacked the resume in this way. Now, I'm going to stop. Oh no, let me show you the headers. So the headers, again, nobody's going to spend more than 60 seconds, except for Antonello, because he reads thoroughly. But I don't spend more than 60 seconds looking at anybody's resume. What I'm going to look at are wherever my eyeball lands. So wherever there's a lot of white space and these headers. So selected directing, selected associate and assistant directing. And I did some name dropping. So I made sure that the names that everybody knows, Al Pacino and Anne Hathaway, just so happen to be laid out where there's tons of white space around them. That's not an accident. I could have buried my assistant directing credits somewhere else. They're not that important to me, but for people who like fancy names, I made sure that they popped out because there's an ocean of white space around these beautiful and complex people's names. And then the next header, readings and workshops. Again, if you were confused about whether I'm a new play director or not, that header, readings and workshops, the fact that I'm devoting 50% of the page to that should really hammer home that I'm a new play director. Now, this resume is different than resumes I recognize of people coming out of collegiate or master's programs because I'm old and I have been directing for almost 20 years. but the principle applies no matter what stage you're at, right? You may not have Al Pacino's name on your resume, and that's totally fine. What is the currency that you want to put forward? In my case, sometimes I do name drop because of who I'm sending my resume to, because it's a theater that cares about it. Do you want to drop the name of a course you took about anti-racism in the American theater because you are applying for a theater that has made a lot of noise about pushing the boundary of anti-racism in theater? You put it where I put Al Pacino. You put that course title right there. You design your resume in the same way, whatever the currency is. If you want to make sure that the person reading your resume just clocks 3 things that you're really proud of, or 3 things that you think are in dialogue with what they're looking for, you organize your resume accordingly. You put it in the headers. You put it where that white space is. You put it where the reader's eyeball is not going to skip over it. Make sense? Cool. So that's my little resume. Antonello, could we look at yours for more of an administrator?
Yes. So I'm going to
Hey.
first share. This is my resume from 2010. And I'm going to show you, so I'll do it side by side with one from 2016, just to show you how it's evolved over time. And I do want to spend a little time, just Laura mentioned, this practice of adding your address is outdated. So the reason why it's still here, I don't live there anymore, so what have you. But you don't need to include it anymore. What's most important is your phone number, how to get a hold of you, and your email address. And list both, because different hiring managers like to communicate in different ways. You'll see my work experience. My story tells that, and this is right after I worked at Manhattan Theater Club, where I had 4 different positions within the development department, is that I am
bigger? Can you make it wider, Antonello?
Wider. Yeah.
Like take up more of your screen? Yeah.
Does that work?
For me, that does. Yeah, that's easier.
Cool. So what my resume tells you is that I have a development background, fundraising background. And I just wanted to point out a couple different things. It would have been very easy for me, the first bullet point, let's say director of special events, to just say conceived, planned, and executed over 40 events per season. But I was specific, like what types of events? A gala event is very different than, let's say, a dinner, right? But I have experience with all of that. So I made sure to include all of that. I could have said in the second bullet point, developed and oversaw all event budgets, but I included how big the budget was, that I wasn't just dealing with, let's say, $100,000, right? I was charged with overseeing a budget of $4 million. I was applying, this job was applying to actually La Jolla Playhouse. This was my resume for the job that I applied to and received then at La Jolla. The education, the university, when I graduated, and the degrees I got, as well as my minor, and then my skill set, right? The different software that I was trained in, Microsoft Word, Excel, and then I'm fluent in Italian. Now I'm going to just bring up side by side my resume from 2016. So now it's going to be a little smaller. And this is when I joined the 2-page club. And as Laura mentioned, you kind of want to keep it within 2 pages, right? Even once you have 20 years of experience, what eventually I would do if, moving from this position, not that I'm saying that I'm going to leave WTF, but if and when I do, more than likely I'll start chopping off different positions. So I don't have it here because it's on an old computer that I no longer have. But my resume, when I first applied to MTC, all it had was the Illinois Shakespeare Festival, and that I taught swimming to 5-year-olds the summer between senior year in high school and freshman year in college. I don't need to say that I taught swimming to 5-year-olds anymore, right? Eventually, you'll learn to start taking things away, and you'll see here, you'll start to also lop off different bullet points, because you don't need to repeat job tasks that you may have done at multiple different jobs. If you've done it at one place, more than likely you've done it another place. And then what I learned to do, and this is where I say, highlight your scholarships. So you'll notice now under education, I mentioned that I was a presidential scholar. I was also the Robert G. Bone Scholar, and that I graduated cum laude. That says more than what your GPA was. I'm going to now close that. I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to bring up the cover letter. Can everybody see this? Oh, what happened? Is that visible?
It was better when it was wider. Yeah, the wider the better, I think.
Yeah. Oh, and just to, I'm going to point. Oh no, I deleted it now. Darn. I don't know if you saw on my resume. I kept it simple. I had a header, and I put a border around it, just to frame as a framing device. And then what I did is I carried over to my cover letter the header, right? I'm not putting a border around this cover letter, but at least tried to keep it consistent so people knew, okay, these two things go together. Address, the address block of who you're applying to. And I know oftentimes it's hard to know who's going to be the actual hiring manager. I love it when people try to do the research and they find me, right? They look, if they're, especially if they're applying for audience engagement, they'll find my name in the staff listing. They'll address it to me. They'll figure out what the address of the company is. That extra little step tells me a lot than if someone were just to say to whom it may concern.
But to answer the question that was put in the chat, what do you do if they don't name an individual? And I'll say, and if your research dead ends and you can't figure it out, it is acceptable to say to whom it may concern. I've also seen dear hiring managers. That's totally fine. You know, you can just keep it simple and professional.
So what I did in my first, essentially two paragraphs here, is I talk about who I am as a person, right? That I worked for, I was promoted 3 times in 6 years at Manhattan Theater Club, which is a testament to my abilities as a project manager, fundraiser, and team player, that I'm not afraid to ask questions or make decisions. I'm not incapable of voicing my opinions or initiating change, that I challenge goals head on, even in the face of a change in economy. This was during the 2008 economic decline, that I'm able to see the reality of the situation and take the appropriate measures to reach success. And then like what my desires are as an arts manager, like who are the types of people that I like to work with? What are the different skills that I bring? I bring a keen eye for detail, a strong sense of dedication. These are those keywords of like, if someone were to ask me, what are the 3 words that best describe you? I could pull from this, right? And then in this last paragraph here, second to last paragraph, why am I leaving? Why am I contemplating leaving Manhattan Theater Club? What is it about La Jolla Playhouse that intrigues me? It's that I want to work for a reputable theater company in a different landscape than New York City, and that I want to represent La Jolla Playhouse, which, like Manhattan Theater Club, was instrumental and fearless in developing new plays and musicals. That word fearless was a word that La Jolla Playhouse used to describe themselves on their website. So I pulled some of their language just to indicate that I know and I've researched their company.
That's awesome. Thanks, Antonello.
Thank you.
I really agree with that strategy of pitching yourself and synthesizing in your cover letter what, you know, saying you were promoted 3 times in 6 years, I think I got that right, is a powerful statement. And what is that? What's the collegiate equivalent of that? Like, I, you know, participated in 4 clubs and ran 2, or I, you know, was able to make meaningful relationships with professors across these 3 different departments, or whatever that is. You want to synthesize it in your resume. And then in that final paragraph, like Antonello did, you want to make the case, especially when you're in in your studies or coming just out of your studies, you want to make that case for, and your organization and this seat I'm applying for is the best possible next step for me, and I'm the best possible person for it. That's going to be a strong closer. Like, now you've gotten to know me through my resume and the first 3 paragraphs of this cover letter. I'm going to drive this home by arguing that I'm the right fit for this and that this position will launch me. I mean, we hiring managers are ego driven and we want to help launch careers. That's like the best part of our job. So we want you to make the case for why this is a mutually excellent fit in that final paragraph. Wow, we are almost at 6 o'clock, and I know we're leaving a portion of from 6 to 6:30 for Q&A. What does the group feel is best to do right now? We can answer some questions right now, or we have more resumes to show. We have examples of like a designer resume, a literary manager resume, and Declan also has pulled some resumes from the MCLA community. They're redacted, so they're anonymous, that we could give feedback for. But I kind of want to survey the room because it's been a lot of like talking at you. What do you want to see more examples? Do you want to pause for questions and then see examples? Tell us in the chat. What would be helpful as we come up on the final third of our time together? Go over designer resume. Yes, Alex. Go over some examples. Great. Anybody else? More examples. Okay, great. So let me take the request for the designer resume. I'm going to pull that up. Just have to click into it. So let me share my window. Okay, by the way, I've chosen resumes that are publicly accessible on these people's websites. So it is kosher what I'm doing. This is an early career scenic designer, scenic and production designer, Ryu Rakulshan, who I've worked with, whom I adore. Ryu is a super talented person who came through the training program recently at Williamstown Theater Festival. So let's look at Ryu's website, or excuse me, Ryu's, you should look at their website, but let's look at their resume, which I've pulled from their website. So you can see, like mine, there's the columns. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns because they gave the date and the year its own column. And they have a column specifying what they did all the way on the left: production design or scenic design or co-scenic design. So you can break it down in 2 different ways. You could either do what Ryu did, where you label it in a column, or you could have a whole section that's design or production design, a whole section that's scenic design, a whole section that's assistant scenic design. Any way you want to break it up is fine. If I were scanning this resume, I would look at the titles and I would try to see a pattern. Does this designer do a lot of musicals, a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of new plays? I see kind of a mix. Seems like a pretty versatile designer, which is always exciting in a designer. Then, to be honest, I scan the director names to see if there's anybody I know. I know Daniel Sharon. I know Carl Cofield. I know I can reach out to Jackson Gay. Like, we do see names on resumes and we call up our friends. It is a very small theater community and we ask about the person. Now, when you're early in your career and you haven't designed much for kind of name recognized directors, it's great to have assistant directing credits. And if you see Ryu's credits, we know that Ryu assisted Santo Loquasto and Ricardo Hernandez and Wilson Chin. Ryu would have also been well within their rights to add the directors of those shows, right? That would be like a double way to have names of people in the industry. Names are really important in this industry. I'm going to stop the share for a second. I think it's not something I love about the industry, because I think it creates a very insular, very sort of ego-driven culture, but for better or for worse, names are currency in the American theater. So if you had a guest professor, if you took a seminar with someone who is not a fancy Tony Award-winning director, but just a working director or a working designer or actor, and that name is going to get recognized by hiring managers like Antonello and me, it's a good idea to see if you can fit it in your resume. Because again, for better or for worse, that's a lot of what people are scanning for. Let me go back to screen sharing real quick. Make sure you can see all of Ryu's gorgeous resume. So again, if we think about headers, we've got design, assistant and associate design, related experience, skills, education, reference. As Antonello said, you can either just say references available by request, or you can list them. It's another way to get names on your resume if you do list them. And these are pretty standard headers for a resume. It's not a bad way to break up a resume. You can see that Ryu has done a lot of work, but has fitted on one page, which I really am grateful for. So that's a good example of a designer resume. Of course, a designer's portfolio is just as important, if not more important, because we need to see the work. So having a portfolio that exists on a website, you know, even if it's just basically a glorified blog, a free website host, you know, like you don't have to spend a lot of money on it, but you should have some visual assets for us to look at if you're a designer. Even if you're at the very earliest stage of your career, you can put up renderings for like a dream project. It doesn't have to be a show that you've even had put up, but you have to give us some sense of your artistry, ideally via a link to your website. What other examples should we look at?
And I just want to mention one thing in terms of references. And this is more so later in your career, but think about who you're asking to be a reference, and always make sure you ask before you list them. And think about, like, if you worked with someone, let's say 10 years ago, are they really going to be the best reference for you now? You may have had an amazing relationship, but if there are people more current to talk to, that's helpful, because sometimes then the reference has to remember, okay, right, they were an intern in summer 2012. The years tend to blend. So, and the reference wants to be your cheerleader. They really want you to get the job, but make it easier for them, right? If you haven't really worked, if it was a long time ago, consider using someone else. Now, if you have a super, super close relationship with this person, absolutely use them, because they know you even today. But if it's someone that you haven't even spoken to in 5 years, maybe consider somebody different.
Yeah. I'm going to share, an example of visual portfolio or what a website. Yeah, I mean, let's look at Ryu's website, and then I'll show a quick actor resume. Let me just get back to Ryu.
While you're doing that, Laura, I'll also add that I have a graphic design resume that is like non-theater related, if people would be interested in seeing a more visual arts option.
Great. Okay, let me share. Here's Ryu's web page. So Ryu does some scenic design, some costume design. I'm focusing on scenic design. So this portfolio, that's what I'm going to call this page of their website. You know, it's a collection of pictures, and you can this is a pretty common way of laying it out. That you have a title of a project you worked on, and if I click the title, I'm sure I will see like between 5 and 20 pictures, production photos from that project. So I'm not just barraged with 200 unorganized pictures. I can go project to project. But if you can see, like, even at a glance, I'm learning something about Ryu. I'm learning that they are not afraid of bold, saturated colors, right? We've got deep blues, deep purples, deep oranges. I see that Ryu is very comfortable with stylized work, right? This 12th Night is not a naturalistic kind of production photo. It looks quite stylized. So do all these people in very specific poses for Antony and Cleopatra. So even if I didn't know Ryu, as a hiring manager, I'm starting to be like, oh, this is a person who's comfortable with heightened worlds. That's the story this portfolio is telling me. Then I get over here, okay, look, they can do something a little more naturalistic too. They have a set design that looks like a naturalistic bedroom with posters on the wall. So it's great to see that they can do that too. But again, here we get Pippin, here we get deep purples and a sort of in the round stylized image. I can tell this is a person who likes metaphor, who likes style in their design. And again, Ryu is a few years out of school, not much, but just a few years out of school, but has done a lot of work. But you can populate your portfolio with sketches of productions that have not happened yet, that research sketches, one acts that you did design in a 10-minute festival, anything goes. And then I'll just play with this, just click. Always important to credit your other collaborators in your portfolio. So you see on the left-hand side, Ryu was sure to credit the director, playwrights, and the other designers. Very important to credit properly. And here we have like Ryu's favorite shots from this show. All right. All right, so feedback on MCLA resumes. Yes, the other example that was mentioned, the graphic design one. Declan, you want to put that up?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Let me see. There it is. All right, so this is an anonymous graphic design resume of a recent graduate.
Can you zoom in?
Yes.
So what I like about this, just even at first glance, is the personality of the person has come through with this little bug, which I assume is of their name. It's simple and yet effective. And there's not like this, it's not like rainbow colored, there's not, it's very simple, simply stated. And it kind of lets me know that this person has a level of taste that may be very similar to that of Williamstown Theater Festival.
Agreed. It's such a nice layout of the information. It's not the densest resume, which is totally fine. This person is either in school or recently out of school. The date's been redacted. So it's great. It does. I'm not expecting it to be more dense than this. And it's laid out beautifully. The headers are crystal clear: exhibitions, residencies, artist collaborations. You know, people like Antonello and I, who are not graphic designers, kind of only know how to use like Excel or Word. And so we put our education at the bottom. The fact that this person put their education like in the upright corner, it already just shows that they are more graphically minded than an unskilled person, an unskilled graphic person like myself. A lot of negative space, a lot of white space, which helps our eye really see what's on there. So just taking a deeper look here. Can you scroll? Oh, sorry. Can you scroll to the bottom? And then to the top again. Okay, I have two questions. Okay, so I can't tell if it's been redacted, but I hope that there's a website on here.
Yeah, this top one is the name, and then it was an email address and a website. Yes.
Beautiful. And can you just pop down to the bottom again? The artist collaborations, I find this isn't my area, so I'm not very well versed in reading graphic design resumes, but I'm wondering who the collaborations were with in the artist collaboration section. It feels a little vague to me why they're called collaborations and how they're different from what come above. That's the only kind of note I have.
And then I would say, like in residencies, where was it? Especially because, again, I don't know what Place Lab is. I know it mentions Iceland. Did they do, was this a residency in Iceland, or was this the topic Iceland related?
Mm-hmm. A little bit more context, I think, would be helpful. Great. Maybe we should show an actor resume. I know we do have some actors in the group. I can pop that up, or do you have one?
I have another student resume that's an actor resume if we want to pull that one
Let's
up.
do that. Yeah.
Let me just grab that one real quick. See where it went. Okay, here it is. And so the top parts are email address, name, and website, and then headshot that were blocked out here.
Great. And can you, yeah, thanks, Declan. So I will say, I love a headshot on the back of a resume. I love it because in casting, I spend most of my time with your resume headshots turned upside down. So to have a little thumbnail of the photo so I don't have to constantly flip back and forth is so helpful. Just to remember, okay, face and name, face and name. And is everybody clear that we are still using this 8x10 headshot and resume thing in theater? We should abandon it. We should go all digital, but we still use paper headshots. They can't be 8.5x11. They have to be 8x10. You show yourself to be unprofessional when you have the wrong size headshot. They have to be stapled at the four corners, not just one staple at top, one staple on bottom. These are literally the things that will give you away as green if you don't do them at the industry standard. I want to say that I think it's helpful to know height. Definitely. I am inclined to move away from people listing their weight on resumes. I think it's more of a practice in musical theater, but I think it's becoming less and less of a practice in non-musical theater. And also, if it's a color picture on the back of your resume, we don't need to know eyes brown, hair brown, because it's in the picture. The eyes and hair thing dates back to when I started my career, when everybody still had black and white headshots. So that is just, it's a personal choice, but I wouldn't miss it if that stuff was missing. So if we all kind of think critically about this, okay, what story is this resume telling? What story is it telling? We're going to look at the kind of plays this person has done, the kind of roles they've done. Now, right away, I see this person played Miss Julie in Miss Julie. And I don't have to be a Strindberg fan to know that's a big role. It's obviously the title role. So that's a great credit to have front and center on your resume, because it shows that in your community, the MCLA community, you were cast in leads at least once. I might not know all the plays, but I know that you played a major role in that one. You know, if you played Sally Bowles, another one that most people in the theater community know. Sally Bowles is the biggest female role in Cabaret. I don't know what Awakening Cabaret is, but it sounds like a big role to me, right? So this person has done a great job of demonstrating that they've been competitive in their pool, that they've played roles where they can carry a show. And that's always something I'm looking for. I love that I can see the names of the directors so clearly in the right-hand column. I know Laura, I know Jeremy, I think highly of them. It's great that their names are on here. It's great that they cast this person multiple times. That tells a story too. If a director or an employer has worked with you multiple times, obviously you weren't a nightmare because they kept selecting you. And so it's definitely great if you can demonstrate that on your resume, whether you're an actor or in any kind of thing, that you are a repeat hire for a company or an employer. Williamstown Theater Festival acting apprentice, we love to see that. I'm dying to know who this is. And then keeping it simple with the training, not overdoing it. I like listing teachers' names in the training. It's just, as I said, names are currency. Seeing Michaela Izquierdo's name on there does wonders for me. It makes me think that this person really knows their stuff when it comes to Shakespeare. I like that the special skills aren't kind of no frills, 4 skills that are all useful and right to the point. So I think this resume gets an A. Antonello,
Now,
anything
what,
to add?
yeah, so what I would say is oftentimes I will actually get actors to apply to work in the box office, partly because they love to talk about theater and like to engage with the public that way. It would be very important, though, that I don't get your acting resume for a job in the box office, right? Great that I know that you're an actor, but that doesn't actually tell me how you would interact with the general public. So if you're applying for an admin position and you are an actor, great, but make sure that then you're submitting the correct type of resume for the job that you're applying for.
I want to add one more thing, and it's definitely for actors, directors, and designers, but I think it's useful for everybody. Something, you can go ahead and stop the share, Declan. I've alluded to this, but for better or for worse, the American theater centers playwrights. And honestly, Hollywood centers playwrights too. I mean, like every major award-winning film and TV show, from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom to This Is Us, they're all written by playwrights. And so whatever area of the performing arts or TV film you're going into, it will behoove you to get some living playwrights onto your resume. So coming out of college, most of us have resumes that look like the one we just looked at. There's a little Strindberg, there's a little Carol Churchill, there's a lot of dead white guys usually on there when we're thinking about playwrights. And if you can, even if it's just 2 workshops you put together in your dorm's common area by a playwright nobody has heard of yet because they're a junior at your college, just to have that little 2-line section of your resume that says new work or readings or workshops, it's going to put your employers at ease. And frankly, it's going to sort of trick them in a good way into thinking of you as not a student, but as a young professional, because the entire ecosystem of the American theater is playwright centric. So to see that you've done readings, you've done workshops, even if you produce them yourself at midnight with a box of wine, and some friends, that will already help tell the story that you have an appetite for new work, that you respect new work, and that you know how to insert yourself as an actor, as a director, as an administrator into the service of the playwright, which is really where it all starts in the American theater. So should we turn to questions?
Yeah, sure. Let's turn to questions. So everyone, if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, you're welcome to do that, but you can also put the questions in the chat and we'll be scanning for those.
Oh, we'd love to see your faces.
Yeah, let's get the faces over here.
We've answered everything?
I mean, I have some questions, but I don't want to take up all the space. That I can start to get the ball rolling, I guess.
And also, if I should just say, Declan, it doesn't have to be a question. If you're like, I'm applying for something, please remember my face. Do you do that. If you already know you're interested in something, or you've maybe even applied for something at Williamstown Theater Festival, please don't be shy about flagging that for us.
Mm-hmm.
So questions or assertions are welcome.
I'll get us started with one. What do you think are if you had to name the 3 top things that you look at first on any resume, regardless of the field, what are the 3 things your eyes are drawn to first, other than just the white space or the name dropping? Are there specific items that you find really important? Do you look at education first, or?
So me personally, I actually don't look at education first because to me, it doesn't matter where you went to school. For me, it's really about your experience and who you are as an individual. So for the first thing is the presentation of the resume. Not everybody, even for an admin, you don't have to create the resume like I created mine. You can be very creative, just as we saw in that graphic design resume. It still told the story, and it told it actually probably more creatively for that specific person because they're applying for a graphic design position. So the first thing I look for is just the presentation of the materials. Then the second thing is the actual relevant experience. Have they interacted with the public? Not the public theater, but the general public. And then I would say the last thing is really about the cover. Did they include a cover letter? We ask for a cover letter, but I can't tell you how many times we receive applications that only include the resume. And for me, again, the resume only tells me part of the story. I really want to know who you are. Yes, can I call and schedule an interview with you? Absolutely. But if I'm scanning, let's say 200 applications, and I'm trying to hire for 12 or 13 people, I'm probably then interviewing about 30 or 40 people. So how do you get to be one of those 30 or 40 people? Have a complete application. So did you follow directions? That's I would say the third thing that I would look for.
And I would say number one is what I just mentioned, some connectivity to the living American theater, the new play aspect of the American theater. I want to know that you are aware of kind of what's happening, what's being written about, and who's doing the writing in the American theater. And a good way to get up to speed on this while you're still in school is to read the theater section of the New York Times. I have a love-hate relationship with the New York Times, but the theater section is actually sort of the definitive chronicle of what's happening, who's, especially for playwrights, like who's writing what, who are the major directors. You know, I want to know that you know who David Cromer is, who Lee Silverman are. These are like top directors, no matter what discipline you're in, because whether you're working under Antonello or you're working under me, it's going to be important for you to kind of be in that, have an awareness. So some tether to the living American theater. And then secondly, some evidence of a work ethic I really look for. If people have never seem to have had a job, it's just been acting. And now once you're a professional actor, like 5-10 years in, it should just be acting. But when you're transitioning out of school, have you never held a job? Like, did you ever work at a restaurant? Did you work in customer service? I really respect that. And I'm always looking for evidence of people's work ethic somewhere on their resume. Grit is what my grandfather would call it. And I don't know if I have a third thing, but those two things are important.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions, disagreements, fears?
I think you guys.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention. My name is Tony Napolitano, and I'm with MCLA Career Services. And I really enjoyed everything that you guys mentioned today. I think, you know, coming from a career services perspective, I've been doing this for 26 years. You guys really gave a comprehensive overview of everything. Back to what you said about cover letters. I don't know why. I mean, I'm so glad you brought it up, because I don't know why, but in the last couple of years, that has been the most common question that students have asked me in career services. Do I need to have a cover letter? I'm just going to submit a resume. I'm not going to bother with the cover letter. And I'm always telling them, please do your cover letter. You can't just submit the resume alone. You really need to have the cover letter. And much to my surprise, there have been applicants for positions at MCLA where the posting clearly states, send your cover letter and resume, and we just get the resume. Mm-hmm. And right there, that's the first indication to me that this person cannot follow directions. That they're not going to follow through with what they're asked to do. So that's a real concern for me. And I'm so glad that you both stressed the importance of the cover letter and the fact that it is the applicant's opportunity to not just regurgitate their resume, but to express their personality, express themselves, and give you a window into who that person is. So I think that was a great point. Thank you.
Here.
And don't be afraid to make us laugh. In last year, though we didn't have a theater season, I remember interviewing someone that had even no customer service experience, but he made me laugh in his cover letter just because his personality rang through. And I said, now this is someone I want to get to know better. And I want to see, okay, they may not have relevant experience, but what is their experience? Let me learn about them a little bit more. And he got an interview. So really, it really makes you shine. And not just a paragraph, right? Like work with people in career services to figure out how to write a business letter, right? With an address block, the actual body of the letter, the signature, like those little things, they might seem so minor, but they just speak volumes. And in the writing, we also get to know, are they a good writer? Do they know how to construct a sentence? Because if they don't, and you're applying for like a marketing position, that's a red flag, right? If you can't write in a complete sentence, then you might not be the right fit for our marketing department. And ask friends to look over your stuff. Like, I can't, like, literally, like, seriously, any friends, all your friends, it doesn't matter. Just get lots of eyeballs on it, because this is such an important thing, because you're about to apply and you might get this job and you want to do everything possible to get it. So just double, triple, quadruple check, have other people weigh in. I do this all the time for friends. I do it for people that I've just recently met. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. And also later on in your careers, I do want to mention one thing. If you're changing careers, we should all be so, hopeful in the future. The cover letter, the reason why the cover letter is also important is if you're switching careers or you're changing focus, right? Let's say one day I wake up and I never want to deal with the general public again, and I want to go into something completely different. The cover letter is where you're going to explain why that is, especially if your resume only tells one part of the story. The cover letter is what's going to rescue you and maybe convince the person to actually hire you. I'm not going to leave you, Laura. I'm not going to leave you.
And in addition to that, what Antonella just said, the cover letter can also help you to explain gaps in your resume. So, a gap in a resume is something that's a red flag, and it most likely will come up in an interview. And they'll say, what were you doing between 2018 and 2020? Because there's nothing on your resume. So the cover letter is an opportunity to explain that as well.
That's right.
Tony, thank you for your kind words, and thank you for, echoing and amplifying some of these themes. I think y'all are very lucky to have Tony on your team.
Thank you. I really enjoyed today.
Zuri Adams, did you get cut off earlier? I want to make sure that you can ask your question if you had one.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to ask, I missed the part a bit when you were talking about what mistakes not to make with your headshot. Could you go over that, please?
Yeah, and for actors, right?
Yes.
For acting headshots. Yeah, obviously, I guess. Yes. So the industry standard is an 8x10, not an 8.5x11, which means you have to get a paper cutter or go to Staples and use their paper cutter to cut it all down to size. When you have headshots made, they can be printed to that size, but the paper, that your resume is actually on has to be trimmed accordingly. So you take your headshot and it should be a color headshot. And it's not important to get highfalutin photographers at the beginning of your career to take the picture. It just has to look like you and be in color and be flattering. You should almost wait to pay an expensive photographer till a little later in your career when you've figured out your type more. Maybe you even have an agent who's advising you. Just get a good picture that is color. And you want to attach it to the resume with a stapler, and it's so specific, but it's staples in 4 corners, all 4 corners. And it's a great idea on the paper, which is your resume, to have a thumbnail, small image in color, if you can afford to print it in color, of the headshot, so that we don't have to flip back and forth between the photograph and the stapled resume on the back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Something I'll add to that too is when I was starting out in college as an actor, I actually had students who were starting out in photography help me, and it was kind of an exchange. So that's kind of a really good way to partner with the people who are in your generation of the industry, but also a more cost-efficient way to start out.
I know we're at the end of our time, so I'm just going to throw my email address in the chat before I forget to do it. So is that spelled right? Yeah. So please, if anybody wants to stay in touch, if you have a question that we didn't get to today, or most importantly, if you do end up applying for anything at WTF, please write to us and say, hey, I attended your thing and I've applied for such and such. We, would love to flag your application for the hiring manager and say, we met this person across space and time in Zoom.
I have one question about either a website or building a digital portfolio. Like if you want to do a website, how do you go about doing that? Is there like a site you go to build a website or?
Yeah, I think it's Wix that is Wix free still? Wix.com, or there's like some free packages and then you can pay. But there are free build your own website platforms. You can Google and find them. Yeah, Wix, Squarespace, Card. I don't know about Card, but that's great. Thank you, Alex. I find that the hosting of the domain is actually where I have to spend the money. Even if I find the free website, I do pay for like laurasavia.com to continue to be mine. And I have no talent for coding or anything like that, but I did my website myself at one of those kind of sites, and it's very user-friendly, even for Luddites like me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for everybody who put resources into the chat.
Yeah, I popped into the chat all of the IAH contacts, just if you guys want to follow us, because we will be following up with this with a resource guide. So we'll put a bunch of that information in there, such as links to where you can start a website if you don't have one yet, some templates or layouts that look good for resumes to start with if you don't have one yet, etc. So just make sure to follow through with that. And you'll see all the updates that we have on it, especially with part 2 for this, where we'll be pairing people with panelists to do a one-on-one portfolio and resume review session to use the time however you want. But does anyone else have any questions? I just want to say thank you so much, Antonello and Laura, for being here and for doing this for us. I feel like I learned so much, especially too, and I've been doing resumes for like 3 years now. And so I just feel like I've learned a lot, and I can't imagine that everyone else didn't learn just as much as me, if not more. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Tony, for coming to represent Career Services. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Please apply. Come work with us.